Okay, so one more teacher story I thought of tonight that I wanted to share. This was when I was in college, and this was a junior college, and so the classroom size was not what you get with your typical university. It was like 300 or 400 people in there. It was probably like 50 or 60, something like that. And this guy who was teaching, it was health class, and he was probably about 60 years old at least, and he had been coaching tennis at this junior college for years. I don't know how many, a long time. And again, this is health class. And one thing to keep in mind is this man would say, you know how people say, as a place filler, like, I'm going out to the store. I saw, Bob the other day, and, he was just, he was just like that. My buddy and I, who sat behind me, and coincidentally, we're just, by the way, he played for the Milwaukee Brewers for a while. The guy who sat behind me, we both played at this particular place together. But anyway, we counted. We got this game where we would count how many times he said, during a 50-minute class period. And the record was during the reproductive section when it talked about, when he had to teach about human reproduction. 161 times. 161 times he said, in a 50-minute class period. We kept counting. But that's not the point of the story today. I thought that was an interesting anecdote. One day we're in class, and to be fair, this guy, and we all did terrible on the first test because he would just talk. And we didn't know what to study. And so the first test comes, we get our first test, and it's exactly, word for word. Like if you look in the book at the end of the chapters, those things they have in the book, the questions they have at the end of the chapter in the book, that's what the test was. Now the thing is, he didn't go over all of that during his lectures, if you want to call them lectures. But, so the first test, I think I made like a D plus on it. But after the first one, we figured out, okay, you just look at what's in the back of the chapter, you study that, and you got it. And so from then on, I made A's. Most people made A's once we figured out that he would just talk randomly, and you had to just look at the questions in the back of the chapters, and you would be okay. And just whatever the answer to that is, because that is word for word, literally, what he would put on the test. Anyway, so we figured that out. Now, it'd been about halfway through the semester. And we had gotten our second or third, I can't remember if it was the second one or the third one. But we got a second or third test back. And this poor old guy, he probably was close to 65. I think that I heard that he died a few years after I left, which would have been, he probably sometime around 2008 or 9. But anyway, he gives the second test back, and by now most people have figured out, don't worry about what he says. Go and look at the questions in the back of the chapters in the book and know that, and you'll be good. Make an A. So he hands the test back. And then he goes up to start his lecture. And this guy in the back of the room, back right corner, right next to the door, and the door of this classroom opens to the outside. Doesn't open to a hallway, it just opens up to the outside. This guy stands, he says, well, he doesn't stand up at first. At first he says, hey, why don't you teach what's on the test? And everybody looks back. He says, and the professor, if you want to call him that, says, sir, says, you didn't teach us all this stuff. He said, it's in the book. Well, you didn't teach us all of this. You never put it, it's not in my notes. And the professor says, well, it's your responsibility to know everything in the chapter. It's your responsibility to know everything in the chapter. And like I said, most people have figured out, look at the back of the chapter, and you will have the actual test questions right there. And the guy says, no, it's your responsibility to teach us what you're going to put on the test. It's your responsibility to teach us what you're going to put on the test. Now, he's getting loud by this point. He's actually really getting loud. And the professor says, well, I'm telling you, you need to just know what the chapter says. You need to go through every chapter. And that's what in college you're supposed to do. You need to know what is in the book. If I tell you to know what's in the book, then that's what you need to know. And this guy, he jumps up and says, no! And he throws his book on the ground, like, bang! And it just reverberates throughout the room. He picks his book up, and then the professor says, get out. You just get out. You just get out. You just get out. And he said, I am getting out. I'm not dealing with this. This is ridiculous. No, I am leaving here. I'm going. And the man and while he's saying that, the professor's saying, get out, get out, get out. So he goes to the door with all his stuff, and he forgets his backpack. But he walks out the door, he goes back, comes back to get his backpack, and then he goes up to the door, looks at him, and says, no, I'm filing a complaint. You don't know. And the professor says, go ahead, do what you need to do. So he walks out the door, and it's silence. Absolute silence in this room. Everybody looking at everybody. Did that just happen? Did that really just happen in here? Wow. And then the door opens back up. And that guy who just ran out, he opens the door and he goes, you don't know me? You don't know me? I'm a blue-collar scholar. I'm a blue-collar scholar. You don't know me? And then he slams the door. Now, at this point, the professor up there is actually shaking like this. And then he just says to the person in the back of the class, he goes, go lock that door. Then he takes like 5 minutes to compose himself. We finish up the class, and it's over. I've never seen anything like that, though, in a college classroom. Guy, he threw his bag, he threw his book on the ground, storms out the class, comes back in, announces to everyone that he is, in fact, a blue-collar scholar, and that we don't know. And the professor don't know. Let's just know that. And then he's gone. Never came back to class again. Don't know what happened. And like I said, this man was like 65, 60. He was teaching health. And I told you he was not the best teacher. He was saying, you know, all the time. But I just thought that was strange. That was weird. And speaking of that, the next story I'm going to tell is about the fight, the baseball fight. The one fight I've ever been in that was actually a bench clearing brawl while I was there. But that's it for today.